what role do you think the government policy plays in for businesses, for entrepreneurs, and in the overall economy perspective?
I think the capital and the labor have always been the main factors of production for the economy, for the GDP, for the growth. Irrespective of whichever era you have lived in agriculture times, the land, which was the capital, and the labor, the farmers and the labor were the factors of production. And that is where the classical economy actually got its motto, its explanations of the capital and labor being the fundamental factors of the production. When it came to the industrial economy, the machines, the buildings, the technology, which is machines is technology and nothing else, that became the principal capital. And you acquire these through financial means, because no one has that kind of financial wherewithal to get the entire capital collected for undertaking the production. So that became the kind of capital which the industrial economy required. Labor still continued to be a principal factor of production, as you saw. So, but increasingly with lots of automation, the role of capital in the industrial economy increased, and the role of labor started getting somewhat reduced. And that is where this classical change, to some extent, this jobless kind of growth in the industrial economy took roots. The automation replacing, I have called in this book, if you would go into more details, that labor is nothing but use of body and muscles for production work. And when machines replace the body and the muscles, the need for labor engagement goes down. And you expand the labor use by increasing the type of the production which you undertake. And that is how the despite the fact that the global population has increased tremendously, from, let us say, 1.6 billion people at the start of 20th century to about 6 billion at the end of the 20th century. Still a lot more people could get absorbed because the production expanded despite per unit use of labor in production going down. Now, as we head into the digital economy, you would find that the other part of the human resource, which is the besides the muscle, which is the use of mind, the intelligence, that is now getting somewhat sort of replaced by the artificial intelligence and all, and therefore the labor use. But classically, the capital and the labor have been the main factors of production. The policy role became more and more important. In the agricultural economy, there was hardly any role for the policy, because you would expand the agriculture to the land which was there in forest or otherwise, and that would be worked by the labor. And the expansion of agriculture took place in the private sector, with the people doing it. And the governments of the day, or the kings of the day, kingships of the day, did not have much role to play as a part of policy, right? But it became important when you look at the kind of instance of US. So when Westerners went into the US, they adopted a very forward-looking policy that whatever you occupy, up to 100, let us say, hectares of land, is all yours. You don't have. So that policy was adopted, which led to the expansion. But in the industrial economy, it is very large role of policy, because the industrial economy, by the time the industrial economy started getting into mainstream in 18th century or so, you had the works from Karl Marx and others, which sort of moved by the labor exploitation, said that the labor should take over the industrial function, and the labor being in the larger quantity, the governments of the day, the communist system, thought that labor should work the industry and not the private entrepreneur who were considered as exploitative at that time. And the governments of the day, the communist governments and the socialist government, use the policy lever very large way. The policy lever was used to oust the enterprise, which is the owner of capital, from the production system, and put the government into the business of production. That is where the production function was shifted. We also made this as a very large policy choice in the 50s. The government of the day decided that we will have a socialist pattern of society. We will oust the private sector from a large section of the economy. So whether it's a basic metals productions or basic engineering goods and all, utilities and all, most of them were taken over by the state, and the state became the businessman, right? And the private sector was ousted from that, and that was the major policy decision, right? And the results were there. Since the capital was not able to work, private capital was not able to work, and the labor got transformed into government servant laborhood, so to say. The productivity suffered, the efficiency suffered, and we had a very low rate of growth of economy. And contrast it with the policy which was adopted by the countries like South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, later China, where the production function, the industry function, was entrusted literally to the private sector, and the government withdrew from it by and large. The growth took place. So that is why I have led to believe, and I have argued this in my book, to put the policy as a central pivot, as one of the three key elements of the growth scenario in the business. The policy is all important. We don't recognize it many times, but the way the productivity of the labor, the efficiency of the capital will work, will depend.
100%. And as you said, we don't realize it because I think the impact of a policy change is felt after 5 years, 10 years, when you look back and you realize, okay, this one particular policy change resulted in all of these things. And a great example of the policies that we followed in the 50s, of more of a socialist government, where government was controlling everything. I think we have a great example in two different states in India, right, with Gujarat and West Bengal going different directions. Even after liberalization in 91, Gujarat went very sort of capitalist and give it to the private sector to do it, versus Bengal went a lot more government controlled by the government. And we all can see the change in growth that these two states have had. So I absolutely agree with you that policy plays a great role. Another example would be China, on how the government supported their private enterprise to build that manufacturing hub by giving them subsidies, by giving them tax breaks, by giving them a lot of other things to eventually become the global manufacturer, de facto manufacturer.